She wish I had speak.
Okay, I'm going to take a few minutes to tell you about Dr. Ben Carson, someone I've been exploring the last few weeks. Ben Carson beat the odds and became a household name in spite of the world that he was born into. Ben Carson was born into an underprivileged family, but he overcame the difficulties in his life. He aspired for higher education, and he determined to make a difference in the world around him. Carson's childhood was filled with many difficulties. He and his brother were raised by a single mother who married when she was 13 years old. When they were 8 and 10, she discovered that her husband had another wife and family, so she divorced him and raised the boys on her own. She was a very hard worker, sometimes having 3 jobs and often leaving the house at 5 a.m. before they were up and not seeing them for days because she'd get home at 11 o'clock at night or later to support her family. As well as a hard worker, she was a strong disciplinarian. When Ben started doing poorly in school, she decided to limit their TV to maybe 2 or 3 programs a week and insist that they read 2 library books a week and submit a report to her. And even though she was a very poor reader herself with a 3rd grade education, she required them to write the report, and she would meticulously go over it with a highlighter, putting check marks and things, but she really oftentimes didn't know what she was reading. Ben also suffered with some anger issues as a child. He attempted to take a hammer to his mom at one point, and he also attempted to stab a friend of his. When the knife broke on his friend's belt buckle, he ran home, grabbed a Bible, locked himself in his bedroom for hours. He pored over the Bible, and he came to a verse that was kind of changed his life. It was Proverbs 16:32, and it says, "Better a patient man than a warrior, a man who controls his temper than one who takes a city." And I quote, "He soon realized that he could control his anger rather than letting it control him." So as a result of the great disciplinarian in his mom and his own determination, Ben Carson developed a true love for learning, and he was able to overcome his personal issues with anger. As Ben began to read more, was forced to read, he developed a fascination with learning. Reading opened his eyes to worlds that he had never seen in many places that he was excited to explore. He went from being called the dummy in his class to being at the top of his class in 1 year. His eyes were open to the fact that the choices that he made directly affected his future, and only he could control and change it. The people, educators around him began to take interest in him and wanted to invest and assist him in furthering his education. He determined to be all that he could be, and he continued as an excellent student until he graduated from high school. He then went on to Yale and graduated from there with a bachelor's in psychology in 1973. After Yale, he went to the University of Michigan School of Medicine to become a doctor. Because Dr. Carson purposed to be the best, he was driven to many amazing accomplishments. He had a career of 35 years as a very skilled and talented neurosurgeon. When he was 33, he became the director of pediatric neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins. He also completed the first successful separation of conjoined twins that were joined at the head. That was in 1987. And he developed a procedure called a hemispherectomy, where you remove part of the brain to control seizures in children where there's no other treatment or control for. He's received many awards over his lifetime. He has 50 honorary doctorate degrees. He's received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is the highest civilian award given in our nation. He's also received the highest award from the NAACP, called the Spingarn Medal of Honor. He's also one of Library of Congress's 89 living legends. We all can benefit from some of Carson's contributions to our society. He has had a personal commitment to better the world around him. He has established a Carson Scholarship Fund for education. He also has authored several books ranging from the topics of personal growth to national unity. He's a Washington Times columnist and a news contributor, and he also is currently, as we all know, our presidential candidate. So in spite of the many trials that the young Ben Carson faced, he's overcome enormous obstacles, obtained advanced education, and contributed greatly to the world around him. And I quote Dr. Carson, "The most important thing to me is taking your God-given talents and developing them to the utmost so that you can be useful to your fellow man." And I believe that Dr. Carson has done just that. If all of us as Americans could develop and adopt the philosophy that Dr. Carson lives by, what a great nation we all would be surrounded in. Thank you.
Yee-hoo! That's a speech of the century, Professor! You write that down! That's better than a mustache!